Welcome to the Energy Mixx Radio Show, where we break down the forces shaping the future of energy. I'm your host, Kym Bolado, and today we're diving into one of the most transformative forces in the energy industry, artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is no longer a futuristic concept. It's actively reshaping how energy is produced, delivered, and managed. From predictive maintenance to grid optimization to renewable integration and efficiency analytics, AI is touching almost every part of the energy value chain. Some see AI as a tremendous accelerator for the energy transition, while others raise concerns. Workforce disruption, cybersecurity risk, and economic and society impacts are a few. And Elon Musk has warned that AI is a fundamental risk, AI is a fundamental risk to the extinction of human society. Now, whether or not you agree with that dramatic framing, there's no doubt that AI will define how energy systems and the workforce evolves for years to come. Today, we'll be digging into these issues, not just from a tactical perspective, but also from a standpoint of policy, workforce strategy, and long-term industry impact. My guest today is Tim Tarpley, the president of the Energy Workforce and Technology Council, which is a national trade association representing energy technology and service companies and hundreds of thousands of American energy workers. And Tim brings a deep experience in workforce development, policy, and technology strategies, helping energy companies navigate the challenges and opportunities in the digital transformation. So, Tim, welcome back to the Energy Mixx Radio Show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me back. Always enjoy our discussions.
Well, you were on the show not too long ago, and we got on a sidebar conversation about AI and how transformative it is. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk about what's really happening, boots on the ground, if you will, of what's really happening in the energy sector and what are your members telling you as far as what are they taking advantage of and how are they seeing it evolving. So let's start with first, how do you define artificial intelligence in a way that would matter for the energy companies and the workers when they're coming to you and asking you all what's happening, what should we be taking advantage of, or maybe potentially the problems they're having as a result of artificial intelligence? How are you describing it or defining it to them?
Right. Well, that's a great question because there's multiple different definitions of AI. I think like any sort of new technology, different folks will have different definitions. But really, I think in terms of the energy space and in the oil field, I mean, AI is technology that can be adaptive and can make increasingly complex decisions on its own, and it can learn as it makes those decisions, and it can collect data, organize data, read the data, make calculations from that data in a way that typically, our computer systems of the past simply, didn't have the capabilities to do. I think as the complexity of AI grows, that definition is going to change. I mean, I think you hear every day that a different AI program, may have reached or come close to some sort of self-realization or consciousness. Um, that's pretty incredible. I mean, I think as you reach those milestones, that definition will become more complex, and we will have to work through it as an industry and as a country, really.
Well, I want to try to break it down today of showing helping our listeners see how much it's already evolving in the value chain pertaining to energy. But I want to start with or back up a little bit and talk a little bit about Elon Musk. In a recent interview he basically said that why would a doctor go in, or why would a student in college look at becoming a doctor now, which could take, 12, 15 years before they're actually in practice, when AI, these robots, he talked about building 1 billion of them, will be in our homes. Housekeepers are out of business. There's a lot of people that will be out of business if what he's saying comes true. And but yet, when we look at energy and especially exploration companies and service companies, the big ones, they need these type of tools as well. So first of all, do you believe, are you hearing anything out there in the field as far as pertaining to maintenance, operations, planning, that this is really a game changer for someone in the energy industry, whether it's exploration or service company?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think first to your point about Elon Musk's comments, I certainly don't think that we're near a point, or do we want to get to a point where we trust the AI to make decisions and we don't really understand why they're making those decisions. Certainly, I don't think you're still going to need doctors um, to understand why the AI is making particular decisions and to check its work. So in the oil field, what we're seeing it really as force multiplication, right? We're seeing it improve efficiencies and being used to maximize the efficiency that one individual or a group of individuals can do. It's helping them make decisions. It's not replacing their decision-making role. And I think that's an important distinction. Using AI to make decisions maybe quicker, to gather information to make those decisions better, and you make sure that you're more informed when you make those decisions. That's what we're really seeing. We're not seeing really turning over the operations in the oil field to AI. That we're simply not at that point, nor do I think we are really anywhere close to that. That isn't what we've seen yet.
I kind of think that when we looked at what happened the with BP and Halliburton, I believe it was the service company where it was out on the Gulf Coast and that water, I mean, I'm sorry, the well blew out. Um, for the life of me, I can't remember the
Deepwater Horizon, I think you might be referencing.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. And a lot of it was human error in some ways. And so as I look out in the future and I realize, sometimes we are tired, sometimes we overlook things, sometimes we're human beings and we do make mistakes. I see this as a potential benefit to the industry because when you're looking at potentially those type of scenarios, um, AI doesn't get tired. AI is going to run through the systems and say, without even thinking, this needs to be shut down, and we shut it down now. So, in some ways, I see the energy industry getting actually safer in many ways due to sometimes human error versus system failures, in which AI would probably be another person or another thing to look over if a system is faltering. It has the ability to know and think intelligently to shut it down versus we may not see that coming. So I see it as a lot more of a safer opportunity for the energy industry to operate by using these great tools to help them. Are you seeing that out in the community? Or, I'm sorry, are you seeing that out with, your members as far as how they're taking advantage of artificial intelligence? You mentioned a little bit of it, but is there one thing that you've heard that somebody's using and you're like, wow, that's amazing?
Well, I think you're right. I think it's really force multiplication. It is, it can check your work. It becomes a member of your team, right? The best teams in the oil field or even on an aircraft or really whatever you want to talk about, it's everyone checks each other's work, everyone trusts each other, and everyone is looking at data and ensuring that nothing is missed. And when you add a computer system, an AI system to that mix, that can be helpful. You can have, as you mentioned, humans might make mistakes, but if you have the AI providing data, looking at the data, you get another set of, I mean, I would say the set of eyes, but obviously that doesn't quite work for AI. But you have another another mind, I guess, looking at that data, and so that is a positive thing. When you look at a active well site, offshore or onshore, you have a lot of activities going on all at the same time. There can be distractions. You can have something unexpected that happened in one area that diverts the attention of the folks that are down on the rig floor. But when you have a computer system that's monitoring other things that perhaps the humans are distracted from, that is a positive thing because it can alert the folks that are on that field that something is going on that they need to address. So I think it can really be a benefit to operations, and it can also improve efficiency, right? When you have all of these things going on at once, and you can have a system that is ensuring that they're working to their greatest efficiencies, that is very beneficial. And those calculations can be done in real time, and they can be done in a at a speed that is just not possible for humans to do. But again, I don't think we're turning over the entire operations to a system. It is being used to supplement and add on to what the humans on site are doing.
Well, there is also, I say this a lot, and maybe I shouldn't, but there's a lot of people who could learn by looking at artificial intelligence that are probably coming for specifically their jobs. And we all deal with them, rather it's the person who didn't want to go to work today, the person who doesn't mind working slow as slow can be while there's a line of 15 people and they're still moving at a snail's pace. There's these people that are just kind of rude. They don't want to work. These are the people that I think AI will replace, but they're also very replaceable in the way it could be something like a Walmart greeter or something along those lines. And nothing to the Walmart greeter, just no offense to them. But I want to look at, those kind of jobs, they probably are in jeopardy, but they're also probably needed in the way they probably could save money as well as efficiency if we're looking at those kind of jobs. But in, again, the energy industry, there's a lot of employees that work in this energy industry, and the majority of them, excuse me, are high level thinkers that have good degrees and make good money off of years of work and understanding the energy industry. I think it will be a long time before we start seeing that AI can actually think like an engineer would of 30 years, of experience. I don't see that happening right away. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, I want to talk about the full scale, implementation of AI, and in what ways do we see the growth happening, especially in what type of categories in the way of jobs do you believe that there'll be displacement in first? Let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show, and we'll be right back. And we're back. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show. My guest today is Tim Tarpley, President and CEO of, I'm sorry, Tim Tarpley, President of Energy Workforce and Technology Council. Tim, before the break, I was discussing how AI will take over some jobs that are probably very easy to take over them and have an automated type of system versus a real person. But since you cover pretty much your organization workforce, tell me from that perspective, which categories in the jobs area do you see them being most at risk when we talk about AI and automation from a service and technology standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And certainly when there's any technological change, there's going to be angst about what kind of disruption that brings. And I think that's natural. And I think we should not go into it blind and think there's not going to be any disruption because that is probably short-sighted. I look back at, when they were coming out with electric lamp posts, street lighters, they lost their jobs. That's just the way it had happened. However, they moved on and did other things, and probably many more jobs were created by electrification of the streetlights than was lost. So there's going to be change, and I think that's going to happen in all industries, but it's certainly going to happen in energy production and in the oil field. As far as what I would be hesitant to make a list of of what jobs are gonna, be the first to potentially go away because I just don't think it's gonna happen like that. There's not gonna be categories. I think the jobs that are going to be replaced are the ones that do, or really the people that don't utilize AI to benefit their own skills and to use it to do more. I think that is really where the disruption is going to be. The other thing I think we need to remember when we're talking about disruption is that AI has the potential to dramatically increase the demand for energy, which in turn will create more demand for jobs to produce energy. So we could be in a situation where we need actually more people to meet this demand for energy, even though we're being much more efficient and we're producing energy with much less input, which I think is a good thing. We're going to be required to produce so much more energy to keep that whole system going. So we could be in a scenario where we actually need more folks in the energy space. So I think we need to be careful when we really think how this is going to affect it. It could go either way. Nobody really knows. But what we think is the best for the workforce is to be trained on new technology, to make yourself an asset, to be able to do what your duties are and do them better with this new technology. And those are the folks that are going to, benefit, I think, from change. Is you can't be standing still. You have to be kind of moving with the change. And I think that's always been the case with technology. I mean, since automation really came into effect, 150 years ago, 140 years ago.
Well, I think that with AI, there's going to be some jobs and these robotics and just getting totally automated are going to help
Mhm.
the energy industry in the way of they're the ones who can probably go in and do the most dangerous jobs. So we're not having to use humans to do some of these types of jobs in the energy sector. So in some ways, that's good. Let's flip the switch and see, do you see any categories or what do you feel the categories will have the least exposure for displacement as we see AI growing, especially in service technology and operations? I mean, I don't see a CEO being replaced by AI for sure. But what are the jobs, we're hearing marketing's gone. It seems like anything that's a pattern type driven type of job may be, you know, in some ways may be changed or eliminated. But what type of displacement do you not think we will see in when we look at artificial intelligence in the energy sector?
Yeah, I think you're right on. I think we are a long way from just turning over the systems to the robots per se, and not having humans making those decisions. I think the AI will provide more data, and be used to make those decisions. But I still think you're going to run these systems via human input and human decision making, and then that's not really going to change anytime soon. I agree with you that some of the more dangerous jobs could be automated, and robotics could be used to make those decisions. But from a regulatory standpoint, like same with the CEO, I don't think we're at a point where you're going to have a rig being decision making on a rig not controlled by a human, right? That is, you're still going to have even if there's some element of automation, you're going to have a human on site making those decisions, determining when to shut certain things off, when to take a certain action. That is all going to remain human, really, for the near term, probably many years. I don't think our regulatory systems really in the United States or anywhere else, or even close to being able to account for not having a human element in operations.
Well, I want to look into the future in the way of let's take a rig site that is using right now men and women, to from start to finish. And I do believe within time, we'll see that pretty much that rig is going to be totally automated, but there's still going to
Mhm.
be people there, right? To
Right.
crunch that data, look at those numbers. And so the evolving of different types of jobs that don't exist right now will be where I see them going. So that being said, do you think that when we look at how do we look at we're losing jobs, the workforce may shrink because of automation, and then we talked about potentially what are the roles that will stay, and obviously CEOs still have to make decisions, but the evolving of this within 5 years, do you think we're there in 5 years? Do you think we'll be seen in 5 years totally automated drilling sites, totally automated offshore rigging that is completely an automated platform. And so there's very few people that are doing that. But back at the headquarters, there's tons of people working there because they're all data crunchers and looking and making sure that systems are working properly. How do you see that evolving in 5 years? Are we going to be in total automation in these types of sites?
I mean, I think automation will continue to move forward at a rapid pace. I think you're right. I think we'll see less folks down at the rig site, working the kind of with their hands at the actual site, and you'll see more people in a control room, either just off site from the rig or back at headquarters. I think that is just the natural progression of the way things are going to happen. I don't think it's going to be as dramatic as we're going to have completely humanless offshore rigs out there in the Gulf, and we're all going to be controlling them from Houston, and there's going to be nobody, be out. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we will be in the near term. I think there's too many issues with regulatory, too many issues with liability. I don't think we're there. But I think you're right. We will see less and less of folks in harm's way, and less, down on the actual operational floor, which is good. It gets people out of harm's way, potentially removes human error from some of these situations that could result in an accident. So I think that's overall positive move.
Tim, I'm going to stop real quick because we went over. So, Callum, when I ask that question, I want you to put this in there and then we can return. So it's going to be, Tim, we have to take a quick break. When we return, I want to talk about potentially a future fully automated drilling site and offshore platform. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show, and we'll be right back. And we're back. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show. My guest today is Tim Tarpley, the president of Energy Workforce and Technology Council. Tim, before the break, I asked you, will we see entirely digital rig sites and offshore platforms and other really completely digitalized, or I'm sorry, not digitalized. Will we see actually artificial intelligence with, of course, total automation at these sites in the near future within 5 years? Okay, so there you go. Okay, I'm sorry, this just got a little complicated on me. Okay. Now, we still have time in this segment, so let me ask you another question. Okay. So, Tim, artificial intelligence is also very much championed for efficiency from policy and a workforce view. And I think that optimization could be a good thing because can you explain the energy sector already operates usually in low profit margins, especially when we talk about service companies, because they can't pass the price on to the consumer like an exploration company could. So them getting optimized and really relying on those type of resources, it wouldn't that really be something that would be resilient for the energy industry in the way of being able to show profits, have efficiency, and be able to return it back to the workforce specifically as well, of having more people hired in specific industries, but it's really efficient. And so those profit margins are starting to grow, which they've been very skinny in the past.
Well, I think you bring up a great point, and I'm glad you did, is with any new technology, you always have to determine in the energy space, especially in oil and gas production, of who's going to pay for that. Because the development of those new technologies ultimately a lot of times falls on the service companies. And any new technology is going to be very expensive, and there's a capital investment you have to make in that to develop it. And then you have to make sure that you get a return on that investment. Otherwise, it slows down. The technological advancement slows down. So I think we still have to work through that. That's nothing new. I mean, efficiencies have over the past 20 years, efficiencies in the oil and gas space have been growing exponentially. We're producing more energy with less rigs in the United States than we ever have, and every year that grows exponentially. We've seen that. I mean, we're almost to the point now where using the rig count as a metric just doesn't really make sense anymore, because these rigs are producing so much more oil and gas. So this is nothing new. We've seen this even before AI came on the scene. So these same questions of who's paying for this new technology, how will that work out? I think we'll see them again, and it'll be a back and forth between the operators who demand the efficiencies and the service companies who have to figure out how to pay for it.
Absolutely. Can you tell me a little bit about investments and competitive strategy from that standpoint? Do you see AI adapting and reshaping where the capital flows in energy? And maybe as an example, we can look towards the digital platforms versus traditional physical assets, as I mentioned earlier. So, will we see capital flowing to these digital well sites that they want them fully digital and offshore platforms? Or where do you see the capital flowing when we talk about energy? Are you starting to see it as of right now, where investors or potentially energy companies, service companies are putting their money towards inefficiencies and, of course,
Yeah.
profitability?
I mean, I think there's two parts to that question. Number one, we're already seeing it. We're seeing investing. This is on the demand side. We're seeing investment in service companies that provide power as a service, because power is the demand from AI and data centers is tremendous. We think it could be 100 gigawatts in the U.S. firm power generation in the next 5 years. Somebody's got to provide that power. So we're already seeing our companies, create power divisions, and the investment money is really flowing into that. So we're seeing it there. But then on the technology side, um, service companies are competitive with each other. The way, their customers demand efficiencies, because ultimately that's beneficial for everyone in the whole system. So you cannot turn your back and not invest on new technology, or you will simply, slowly fade into you'll be forgotten as a service provider. So all these service providers are all out there trying to get the best technology and to become the most efficient, and that is what drives a technological advancement, and that's a good thing, because it's what's made this industry so much more efficient. So that is not going to change. Even before AI, that was the case. I mean, that's been the case for really the history of energy production and oil and gas in the United States and around the world.
Well, we're going to go to break, but I have a question when we return from break that I'd like for you to answer, which is, do you believe, now this is your background because you did come from Washington, D.C. You're very familiar with policies and how our policies are made and regulations. But should there be right now, our lawmakers looking into how AI is going to be regulated in the adoption, especially in the energy sector? Or do you think we should just let it play out and maybe it adapts itself, or does it turn into the Wild Wild West? I don't know. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show, and we'll be right back. And we're back. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show. My guest today is Tim Tarpley, the president of Energy Workforce and Technology Council. Tim, before the break, there's been a lot of discussion that our policymakers are not really focusing on artificial intelligence and the avalanche that's coming. And some people have even, like Elon Musk, and I'm not saying he said it, but he gave a dramatic statement that we need to watch out for mankind because of the robots and
Mhm.
artificial intelligence coming. But there's a lot of other people that are talking about this huge displacement of jobs that we are starting to see, from automation in food chains to automation in our grocery stores. And I can see where there could be a lot of automation for efficiencies and, of course, profitability. But when we talk about the energy sector specifically, do you believe that policymakers and regulators should be playing a guiding role in how the energy sector is adapting energy and balancing innovation with workforce protection and competitive competition? Because this is what you all do. You advocate for it. Have you all had these discussions about what does the future look like, and where should we be talking to elected officials about policy?
It's a great question, and I think you are right, at the top of the question when you kind of laid out that policymakers have been slow to get involved in AI, and I think you're right. They have. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that with any new technology, there's always going to be a debate about who regulates it, right? So right now, there's a debate between, do states have the right to regulate AI? And it goes back to the traditional states versus federal argument. There are many who believe, of course, states have the right to regulate AI that occurs within their state lines, and they should have the authority to do that. But some in the tech industry argue that, well, you can't have 50 different state laws affecting a new technology like AI because it's kind of everywhere, right? And that having multiple state regulatory frameworks is just going to make it impossible, and it's going to slow down technological development. And that question has not been solved, in my opinion. I mean, I think there's back and forth on both sides. There was an effort to you know, federalize AI policy, some months back. I think that's still an open question. So that is out there. But as far as, what energy production is generally going to be regulated at the federal level, especially for offshore. There are state regulation, there's patchwork. There's state regulations that are different. There's state regulations in Colorado, for example, that you wouldn't necessarily have in Texas. There's different regulatory schemes. Leasing is different, depending where you are. So the industry already operates with differing regulations in different jurisdictions. I don't think that is going to necessarily hinder the development of the new technology. But at the federal level, Congress has been very reactive for about the last decade or so, and they tend to not get involved in anything unless they feel like they have to. So, in my opinion, we won't see federal regulation, dramatic federal regulation on AI, through Congress unless something happens that kind of forces their hand and they have to regulate it. If there's some sort of safety concern or an accident that occurs and Congress feels like they have to get involved, then that's when I think we'll see, an AI bill that really tries to regulate, on a large scale. We haven't seen that yet, and until we do, I don't think Congress is gonna take a back seat and is really gonna let the technology develop, and see where it goes. That could
Well,
change, but.
here's the thing is, as I look out, and of course, I'm coming to you from Texas, and so are you. We're looking at it from a Texas standpoint, but you just
Mhm,
start looking, Tim, at the jobs potentially. So you go to the airport, and the reservation is we're already using the machines. They
mhm,
load the bags. When we go to restaurants, there's nobody there anymore. You place the order on your phone app, and there's your food to be picked up, and everything in the
mhm,
back from the cooks are all automated because it's machines doing it. Then maybe you look at what happened to the poor Walmart greeters. Well, they're gone too. And so is self checkout, which is growing as well. You just start seeing this massive amount of jobs that can easily be outsourced in the way of automation. And these
mhm,
jobs, as you start adding them up across the United States of America, there's a
mhm,
lot of job displacement. And some of the research and the data that I've, read is pretty scary as far as the amount of those type of jobs that could be replaced very quickly, plus marketing, coders, uh, graphics designers. And one article I read, which was, I don't remember who it was, I won't name the source, but it was pretty compelling to say we're going to have a lot of jobs very quickly that are going to go away, of these type of jobs that can be very easily replaced. And that brings me to, you know, we should be thinking about it, because if you have this massive amount of jobs that are not coming back, we need to be lining up jobs that can, jobs that will, help them make a transition, as you mentioned earlier in the show. But the last question is, so now with AI being more complex in those roles as they're starting to grow, and we all know we see that already happening in the supply chain of energy. What type of policies or framework do you think we're going to need to have in place when we're talking about cybersecurity and operational risk? Are any of your members talking about, yeah, I want to, replace um, 10, 15 jobs for efficiency, but I'm also afraid that if I do that, I might be losing some of my cybersecurity or operational risk in doing that. Are you hearing some kind of pushback that they're a little afraid to move without really understanding how this is all going to come out in the end? Are you
I
hearing
think
any of that?
you're right. There's I think some well-placed hesitation to make changes too quickly. I mean, we talked about Congress and kind of federal regulatory scheme. the law also has not caught up with AI and some of this automation. When you have decisions made by artificial intelligence, who is liable for the results of those decisions, right? That's going to have to get worked out in the courts. I mean, ultimately, it's I think the courts will err on the side of whoever creates the system, whoever's operating the facility, or whoever started that AI programmer turned over that decision to that AI, they're going to still be liable. So I think that all needs to be worked out. But until kind of the those test cases go through the legal system, until we know really where the regulatory power is going to lie, I think companies are going to be hesitant to go too far, right? They're going to start with the more logical things that AI can take over, that have less risk, less operational risk. And we'll see folks kind of dipping their toes in the water and seeing how it is first. I just don't, I think there's going to be change. It's going to happen, very, very rapidly, in the long term. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to happen overnight. And I think there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be times when we take a step back and say, okay, maybe we were moving a little too fast here. And I think that's fine. Ultimately, that's the way it is with any new technology. You're gonna move forward. You're gonna test where it works and maybe test where it doesn't, and do things in a kind of deliberative fashion. Is how I see this moving forward.
Very good. Let's take a quick break. When we return, I want to get your opinion on what's happening with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. You're listening to the
Sure.
Energy Mixx Radio Show. We'll be right back. And we're back. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show. My guest today is Tim Tarpley, president of Energy Workforce and Technology Council. Now, Tim, you've been on the show quite frequently, but many people who might have just tuned in are not aware that you have a lot of experience when we talk about dealing with, living and dealing with DC and how laws are changed and working with Congress. And of course, we are now in a conflict with Iran, excuse me. And I see so much misinformation on Facebook that I really want to use this segment to try to clear it up. First of all, can you tell our listeners why are these price spikes going and how happening in the United States? The price at the pump is God darn it, I'm just completely messing this up. Let me start over again. I'm not the one who's going to be taken out, by the way, it'll be you. Okay, so let me start over again. Um, can you tell us a little bit about the conflict that's happening in Iran? First of all, there's a very important choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, who has gotten a lot of media attention because ships are not able to go through there. What seems to be the conflict with why that choke point is so important for us to pay attention to? And then I'll ask a backup. Why is that? Why is that choke point so important for us to keep an eye on it?
Well, I think about 20% of the world's oil in a typical, cycle goes through that strait. So right now, the Iranians are getting hit pretty hard. They are responding by threatening any ship that goes through that strait, and they're using in some instances, very cheap drones and shoulder-fired missiles and other tactics to attack ships that do try to enter that strait. So you've got a potential to disrupt about 20% of the oil in the world market, which is obviously significant. That's why we're seeing the price spikes. Really, it's uncertainty. Anytime you have a conflict anywhere in the world where there's oil being produced, it inserts uncertainty into the markets, and the markets don't like uncertainty. Nobody likes uncertainty because you can't plan ahead. You can't make business decisions when there's uncertainty. So that's why we are where we are. The countries that rely on that export, they're looking for other ways to ship that oil out. You certainly can go overland through Saudi Arabia, and ship out the other way. Hopefully the there'll be a ability to bring ships through the strait again soon, which will take away some uncertainty, and we'll see the price stabilize some more. And certainly a volatile oil price is not good for anybody. There's a misconception out there that that somehow benefits oil companies. Then that's not really the case when you have a fluctuating oil price that's bouncing up and down. So we'll see. It's still unclear to me, and I think most of the listeners really how long this could last. Could be relatively short, or it could drag on for quite some time. We just don't know. Again, that uncertainty is being priced into the market because we just don't know yet.
Well, and when you explained that to us, you said that about 20% of the world's oil is going through the Strait of Hormuz, but in reality, only about 2% of ours goes through. So it's not a necessity for the United States as much as other countries that that choke point is very important. And yet here in the States, we see that we're paying higher prices at the pump. But for the individuals who are on social media making claims that the operators, the exploration companies, that we are sticking it to them in that. I'm sorry, I don't know why I said we because I'm not an exploration company, but that the energy company is sticking it to Americans and they're exploiting them. Can you explain to the listeners that that's not quite true, that oil companies don't set prices of what they're paying at the pump?
Right. I mean, this goes back to the way that the oil markets work. It is a worldwide commodity that is traded worldwide, obviously, and it is subject to market fluctuations. The oil companies are not setting what that price is. The markets do, and the markets, as we talked about earlier, they react to many things. Uncertainty is one of them, and we have uncertainty that is being baked into the market right now. That is why the price of oil is higher, significantly higher than it was a month ago. You pointed out it is very true, and it's an important thing for us to remember is we do get less oil imported from the Middle East now than we did, say, perhaps 30 years ago, and that's because of the shale revolution. It's because of what we're doing in West Texas and North Dakota and other places in the United States. So we are less reliant on that Middle Eastern oil for our own domestic consumption. But our friends in Asia, our friends and allies in Asia, they are quite reliant on it. So it's a problem because we're all competing with each other for energy. Everyone knows they need it, and they're out there making deals to try to secure it. So of course we're going to feel the effects here in the U.S. even though we are more we can produce more of our percentage of our oil here at home, but we are not completely immune. We don't have walls from the worldwide energy markets here in the U.S. That's just not the way it works.
So, do you think that's the reason why President Trump in today's social media said that he asked like 7 countries to help them go and monitor and secure the Strait of Hormuz because it is in their best interest to be doing this, not necessarily the United States of America always having to police everyone to help everybody who needs this passage, this choke point that has a real vested interest, you know, get down here and help us clear this path. Do you believe that's why he's doing that?
Sure. I mean, I don't want to get into trying to guess, where he's coming from there, but I think his argument is that this is a worldwide issue, that the whole world needs energy, and they need energy from the Middle East, and so that it should be secured by all the nations that rely on that. That seems to be his argument, and we'll see how that goes. I mean. We haven't seen a rush of countries immediately responding to that. Maybe that will change in the coming days. I think there's still a lot to be determined how this all plays out, and also, how are the Iranians gonna play it? I mean, they have spent the last 2 weeks attacking really all their friends and neighbors in the region. It's not a good way to make friends by firing missiles, across the across the ocean to your neighbors and countries that may have had some sympathies for you prior to doing that. So, the Iranians are going to make their own calculations on how they play out this crisis going forward, and I think there's a lot to be, seeing how it all plays out.
Well, one thing is for sure. I think that, like you said, as it evolves, this is something that needed to be dealt with a long time ago, and I think it's happening now. Tim, thank you for joining me today, talking to us about AI, how you see it panning or working out in the energy workforce, as well as in the future, and giving us an update on what you think is happening with Iran and the very important choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. And to our listeners, remember that AI isn't just a machine, it's about people, policy, and the future of work in the energy. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep thinking about how these technologies will affect your career and your community. If you enjoyed our show today, please subscribe to the Energy Mixx Radio Show wherever you get your podcast and stay tuned to our next episode. And we'll continue to unpack technologies driving the energy transition. Tim, again, thank you for being a guest, and thank you to all of our listeners.
Thanks for having me.